Greetings all. This is my third attempt at a vloggy thing, and this evening I'm afraid there will be spoilers for a rather wonderful film that I'm very fond of. This film is District 9, a critically acclaimed South African sci-fi extravaganza from 2009, a couple of years ago. It's also among my favourite films of that decade just gone, so if you've never seen it, you may well want to, and more than a few people agree with me that it's rather lovely, so if you wish to avoid rather gigantic spoilers, I would stop listening to this and go find District 9. It's probably not too hard to find these days. Yep. So I assume you've gone, whoever you were, and if you're still listening despite having not seen the film, I gave you ample warning. Now, as I mentioned, District 9 is one of my favourite films of the noughties, as that decade is kind of unfortunately known. Was that really the best name anyone could come up with, the noughties? I don't think that's really going to live on in any kind of fame. That's not a sentence, but you know what I mean. Now, District 9. There are very few films coming out these days that I ever get at all excited for. Case in point, they're remaking Total Recall. They're remaking Total Recall. They are remaking Total Recall. In case you hadn't heard me, they're remaking Total Recall. If you're wondering why I repeated it, it's because I'm still not sure I heard it correctly myself. This is literally the stuff out of a bad nightmare. If I hadn't seen it from several sources, I would assume it was some sort of elaborate troll. There are no words for just the internal anguish that I feel whenever I remember that they're remaking Total Recall. But that's another topic for another day. But the point is, it kind of highlights quite nicely in a little package with a bright red bow on top and perhaps a patterned wrapping. It just kind of highlights why I hate modern Hollywood so very, very much. With a white-hot passion. They have this incredible ability to take even the purest, most glorious, beautiful little flowers and just kind of snatch them, cut them off the stalk, mush them into paste and repackage them, and then make tons of money off doing this because people have very low standards, it seems. But again, another ramble for another day. My point is, District 9 is the exception. District 9 was something I heard about and for once was genuinely intrigued in seeing, which is very rare these days. I mean, last year, the only film I believe I went to see in the cinema last year was the Conan reboot, and that's only because it looked like an actual decent, faithful, relatively faithful adaptation of Robert E. Howard's stories. And I defend that film. It's very stupid, very silly, but you know what? When I go and see something called Conan the Barbarian, that's what I want. Of course, the original Arnie film is infinitely superior, but it doesn't have anything to do with the Conan character at all. So, again, another ramble for another day. I'm very good at those tangents. I like to just try and cut them short. But the point is, District 9. If you ask me, there are so few films these days that manage to create such an immersive, believable world and fill it full of interesting characters, and then have a plot that actually is, engaging and progresses and goes somewhere and has some form of depth, just like the characters. It's quite a remarkable concept, I know. This is what gets me, these films these days. They just blend together, so many of them. Something like The Expendables. I barely saw The Expendables a couple of months ago, but I cannot remember any of it. It's just gone from my head. There's like one bit with a plane that was kind of fun, and then the rest of it's gone. It's just a blur of underwhelming Stallone quips and literally any other Stallone film I would rather watch 10 times and see Expendables again. And they're making a sequel to that. Again, I hate you, Hollywood. But anyway, point is, one of the reasons I love District 9 so much is it has, without a doubt, I'm finally getting on topic here, it has without a doubt one of my favourite protagonists in any film and probably media product ever. That's quite a statement. But, and this is of course the main man, the not much to look at but surprisingly durable Wikus van der Merwe, whose name I've probably mispronounced, but I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, more or less. Now, again, we've all seen the film here, and if you haven't, you should not be listening to this. But as you know, he goes from being a kind of passively racist, pen-pushing bureaucrat, has his entire life turned upside down, and then he suddenly finds himself mutating into something horrible and having to find out how to do this, and for most of the film, when he helps people, it's only out of selfish reasons, wanting to get better and put his life back to the way it was. But at the end, he has that kind of Han Solo moment when he, finally does the right thing, arguably, and sacrifices his own well-being in the short term so that what's his face, Christopher Johnson, and his kid can escape and do all those nice things. And that's the thing, isn't it? I'm going by partly by my own interpretations and partly by what the director, whose name I've spectacularly forgotten, Neil Blomkamp, says in the commentary. I'm that much of a nerd, I watch the commentary. This whole, the irony of him becoming more human as he becomes more alien. That right there is more, intellectual than all the Transformers films put together. And he just, even before he has this big arc, but even before that, he is strangely likable. I mean, even when you're watching him like burning, he's like laughing and kind of pointing and joking as like a whole house full of alien eggs are burning to death just feet away, but he's just so cheerful and well-meaning and eager to please. There's just something strangely addictive about his personality, And I think a lot of that is apparently a lot of his dialogue. There was a script, but a lot of it was kind of improv. And I think that really shows. He just seems so genuine. I think we've all met a person like that who just, I think, well, reminds of myself a little bit, but a person who just seems to always just be muttering something and trying to kind of give thumbs up and just be happy no matter. You could go right up to him and call him something horrible, and he'd be all, I see that's your opinion and you're entitled to it. I'm sorry that we can't get along, but he'd always try and make the best of something. And the whole idea that he thinks he's really important and a crucial part of the company. So when the company just turns around and decides it's willing to cut him open and sell his bits just to make a bit of cash, that kind of destroys that illusion rather drastically. I nearly said rather drastically. I don't know what I was about. Going very posh for a second there. But yes, and that's the thing, isn't it? When you have a character, District 9 at the end of the day is still an action film. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of my favourite films are action movies. But when you have a character who is actually likable, interesting, relatively unique, and as a bonus has some sort of arc, although you do not necessarily need an arc to have a good character, but in this case he does, it helps. When you have all those things, the explosions at the end of your film will actually mean something and carry some weight. Now I know this is a strange concept, But this is old school. This is, something like Total Recall. It does remind me of Total Recall a little bit, just in the way he goes through so much punishment. But the thing about in Total Recall, Arnie's like a superhero, but in District 9, he gets totally messed up through that film. He nearly gets cut open. His entire body is slowly falling apart and turning inside out. He gets shot a few times. He nearly gets his arm cut off. Oh yes, and in a remarkably harrowing but strangely hilarious scene, he chops his own finger off. That was a pretty damn unexpected moment. Again, something unexpected happening in an action film. What are the odds? But that's the thing, it's just he's so interesting, even when he's being a complete git and like betraying, the aliens just to save his own hide. There's something about him, just he's so likable despite being a complete git for most of the film. And I think that's a remarkable achievement. I hear that there may well be a prequel at some point in the future, and I look forward to that. I hope it's more of a... If you've ever seen Spoony's little vlog, District 9 review, he said he would have liked to have seen some sort of like documentary exploring how the aliens arrived and their gradual relationship with humans, how that deteriorated. And if the prequel turned out to be like that, I'd be very happy, because I think I've had enough. I've had my fill of action in the District 9 universe. I want to see a bit more behind the scenes, and I know the ambiguity is part of what makes it work, but I don't want to see what happens when the ship comes back, if it comes back. I don't care about that, I think the story is fine as it is. I want to know how it got led up to that point. Did Wikus have much of a history with the aliens prior to going out and trying to evict them would be a good point. Something like that. I think you could really build on these things. But at the same time, we could have a Star Wars Episode 1 situation all over again and completely ruin a perfect good story. But I have a bit more faith in Neil Blomkamp than George Lucas these days. I think Mr. Lucas has more than proved his complete insanity by this point. So, yep. But yes, this has been my rambly praise of Wikus van der Merwe and District 9 as a whole. If for some insane reason you have not seen District 9 despite my multiple warnings to stop listening to this, then you really should by now, even though it would have been better if you'd done it 10 minutes ago, however long this video is. So, yes, District 9. I would not go so far as to say it's one of my absolute favourite films ever. That's a very exclusive club, by the way. Total Recall, Highlander, RoboCop, and possibly Fight Club are the greatest movies ever. Just make a note of that. But I could see myself saying it's like in my top 5 sci-fi things. Again, there's a lot of competition, but I could see myself saying that. It is rather excellent. And Wikus van der Merwe alone makes it worth watching. He's just so darn interesting. Well, I've had fun. I hope you found this I hope you found this interesting. If I'm about done tripping over my words, I could probably edit that out, but I like to leave these things in. It just makes me seem less like a robot. I'm a human being with faults and flaws, just like Wikus van der Merwe. And yes, fare thee well.